Hey there. Tonight, we're taking a deep dive into some truly fascinating medieval survival methods that have been lost to time. Shall we begin? There exists a quiet wisdom in the shadows of our forgotten past, a collection of survival techniques that our medieval ancestors developed through necessity, hardship, and an intimate understanding of the natural world that we have somehow allowed to slip away from our collective memory in our rush toward modern convenience and technological dependence. These methods, born from centuries of human struggle against the elements, famine, disease, and the constant threat of death, represent a profound understanding of how to sustain life, using nothing more than what the earth provides, and what human ingenuity can devise from the simplest materials and observations. In the flickering candlelight of medieval monasteries, monks would carefully tend to their herb gardens, not merely for seasoning their simple meals, but as living pharmacies that could mean the difference between life and death when winter brought its harsh grip and illness swept through their communities like wildfire through dry wheat fields. They understood that certain plants held within their leaves, roots, and flowers the power to heal wounds, reduce fever, ease pain, and even fight off infections in ways that our ancestors took for granted, but that we have largely forgotten in favor of manufactured medicines that often carry side effects and dependencies that natural remedies rarely possessed. The art of food preservation in medieval times went far beyond simply salting meat or drying fruits, extending into sophisticated techniques that could keep food safe and nutritious for months or even years without any form of refrigeration or chemical additives. Methods that relied entirely on understanding the natural processes of fermentation, dehydration, smoking, and the careful manipulation of environmental conditions to create storage systems that were both effective and sustainable over long periods of scarcity. Medieval people understood the landscape around them with an intimacy that we can barely comprehend in our modern world of GPS navigation and weather forecasting, reading the subtle signs that nature provided to predict storms, locate water sources, identify edible plants, and navigate vast distances without any instruments beyond their own carefully trained senses, and the accumulated knowledge passed down through generations of travelers, traders, and survivalists who had learned to read the language of clouds, wind patterns, animal behavior, and the thousand small details that could mean the difference between finding shelter and perishing in the wilderness. The construction techniques employed by medieval builders created structures that could withstand centuries of weather, warfare, and natural disasters, using nothing more than locally available materials, and an understanding of physics and engineering that was gained through practical experience rather than theoretical education. Methods that produced buildings and fortifications that still stand today, while many modern structures built with advanced technology and sophisticated materials fail after mere decades of use. Water procurement and purification in medieval times involved techniques that could locate, collect, and safely prepare drinking water from virtually any environment. Knowledge that included understanding which natural materials could filter contaminants, how to dig wells in different soil types, methods for collecting rainwater and dew, and ways to purify water using heat, natural filtration systems. And even certain plants that possessed antimicrobial properties that could make questionable water sources safe for consumption. The textile arts of the medieval period encompassed not just the creation of clothing and household items, but survival techniques that could provide warmth, shelter, and protection from the elements using plant and animal fibers that could be gathered, processed, and woven using simple tools and techniques that required no external power sources or complex machinery. Methods that could produce waterproof materials, insulating fabrics, and durable goods that could last for years with proper care and maintenance. Medieval fire-making techniques extended far beyond simply striking flint and steel, encompassing a comprehensive understanding of different materials that could serve as tinder, kindling, and fuel, methods for starting fires in wet conditions, ways to maintain fires for extended periods with minimal fuel consumption, and sophisticated approaches to using fire for cooking, heating, metalworking, and even communication through smoke signals and beacon systems that could relay messages across vast distances faster than any human messenger could travel. The art of hunting and trapping in medieval times involved not just the pursuit of large game animals, but intricate knowledge of how to capture small animals, birds, fish, and even insects using ingenious devices constructed from natural materials, techniques that could provide protein and other essential nutrients even when larger prey was scarce. Methods that were so effective and sustainable that they could support entire communities without depleting the local wildlife populations that provided this crucial food source. Navigation techniques employed by medieval travelers, merchants, and pilgrims relied on understanding celestial patterns, seasonal changes, geographical features, and natural phenomena that could guide them across unfamiliar terrain even in conditions of poor visibility or when conventional landmarks were obscured. Knowledge that included reading the stars, understanding wind patterns, recognizing the subtle signs that indicated direction and distance, and using natural compasses created from magnetized material and floating devices. The preparation and storage of medicines from wild plants represented one of the most sophisticated aspects of medieval survival knowledge, involving not only the identification of medicinal plants in their natural habitat throughout different seasons and growth stages, but also understanding the proper methods of harvesting, drying, storing, and preparing these materials to maximize their therapeutic properties while minimizing any potential harmful effects. Knowledge that included complex formulations that combined multiple plants for enhanced effectiveness. Medieval food foraging techniques went far beyond simply gathering obvious fruits and nuts, encompassing detailed knowledge of which parts of various plants were edible at different times of the year, how to properly prepare foods that required special treatment to remove toxins or improve digestibility, understanding seasonal availability patterns, and knowing sustainable harvesting practices that ensured the continued productivity of wild food sources from year to year. The art of metalworking in medieval times involved techniques for locating, extracting and processing metal ores using simple tools and natural materials, methods that could produce everything from basic tools and weapons to complex mechanical devices. Knowledge that included understanding different types of metals and their properties, techniques for smelting and forging using wood-fired furnaces, and methods for recycling and repairing metal objects to extend their useful life indefinitely. Medieval people possessed sophisticated knowledge about weather prediction that was based on careful observation of natural phenomena rather than technological instruments. Understanding how cloud formations, wind changes, animal behavior, plant responses, and atmospheric conditions could provide accurate forecasts that allowed them to prepare for storms, droughts, and other extreme weather events that could threaten their survival and livelihood. The construction of shelters and temporary housing using nothing but natural materials represented a crucial survival skill that enabled medieval people to create warm, dry, and secure living spaces in virtually any environment. Techniques that involved understanding how to select appropriate sites, gather suitable building materials, and construct structures that could withstand wind, rain, snow, and other environmental challenges using only hand tools and human labor. Medieval techniques for soil improvement and cultivation allowed people to grow food in marginal lands and poor soil conditions using natural fertilizers, crop rotation methods, and soil management practices that could gradually transform unproductive land into fertile agricultural areas capable of supporting substantial populations. Knowledge that included understanding plant relationships, natural pest control methods, and sustainable farming practices that could maintain soil fertility for generations. The preservation of tools and equipment in medieval times involved techniques for maintaining, repairing, and protecting valuable items from rust, wear, and damage, using natural materials and simple methods that could extend the useful life of essential survival equipment indefinitely. Knowledge that included understanding different materials and their properties, methods for creating protective coatings and treatments, and techniques for resharpening, reshaping, and rebuilding worn or damaged tools. Medieval rope and cordage making techniques used plant and animal fibers to create strong, durable lines and cables that could serve countless survival purposes, from securing shelter and equipment to creating traps, tools, and even bridges. Knowledge that included understanding which materials provided the best strength and durability characteristics, methods for processing raw materials, and techniques for braiding and twisting fibers to create cordage with specific properties for different applications. The art of food combination and preparation in medieval times involved understanding how to mix different ingredients to create nutritionally complete meals that could sustain health and energy over long periods. Knowledge that included understanding protein complementation, vitamin and mineral requirements, and methods for creating satisfying and nourishing meals from simple ingredients that might seem inadequate when considered individually. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining cutting tools involved not only the forging and shaping of blades, but also understanding how to keep them sharp and functional using natural abrasives and sharpening methods. Knowledge that included selecting appropriate stones and other materials for hunting different types of blades, understanding proper angles and techniques for sharpening, and methods for maintaining and protecting cutting edges to ensure their continued effectiveness. The storage and organization of survival supplies in medieval times involved techniques for protecting essential items from moisture, pests, theft, and deterioration, while keeping them easily accessible when needed. Methods that included understanding appropriate containers and storage methods for different types of materials, techniques for organizing supplies for maximum efficiency, and ways to conceal and protect valuable items from discovery by potential threats. Medieval people possessed extensive knowledge about the medicinal and nutritional properties of tree bark, roots, leaves, and other plant parts that could provide essential nutrients and therapeutic compounds during times of scarcity. Understanding that included knowing which parts of trees could be eaten safely, how to prepare bark and other materials to improve their palatability and nutritional value, and which tree products could treat specific ailments and health conditions. The art of creating natural dyes and preservatives from plant materials enabled medieval people to protect and color textiles, wood, leather, and other materials using substances derived from their natural environment. Knowledge that included understanding which plants produce the most effective colors and preservative compounds, methods for extracting and applying these materials, and techniques for creating lasting treatments that could protect valuable items from deterioration and wear. Medieval fermentation techniques extended far beyond brewing and winemaking to include methods for preserving vegetables, dairy products, and even meat using natural fermentation processes that not only prevented spoilage, but actually improved the nutritional value and digestibility of foods. Knowledge that included understanding the proper conditions for different types of fermentation, methods for controlling the fermentation process, and ways to use fermented foods as natural probiotics and health supplements. The construction of effective insulation and weatherproofing using natural materials allowed medieval people to create warm, comfortable living spaces even in harsh climates. Techniques that involved understanding the insulating properties of different materials, methods for creating air barriers and moisture protection, and ways to design structures that maximized heat retention while providing adequate ventilation to prevent condensation and air quality problems. Medieval techniques for water storage and management included methods for collecting, storing, and distributing water efficiently while preventing contamination and loss. Knowledge that included understanding different container materials and their properties, techniques for creating waterproof seals and closures, and methods for maintaining water quality during extended storage periods. The art of creating natural adhesives and binding agents from plant and animal materials enabled medieval people to construct and repair items without relying on manufactured products. Knowledge that included understanding which natural materials provided the strongest and most durable bonds, methods for preparing and applying these adhesives, and techniques for creating permanent and temporary connections for different purposes and applications. Medieval people understood sophisticated techniques for processing animal hides and pelts into leather, fur, and other useful materials that could provide clothing, shelter, containers, and tools. Knowledge that included understanding proper skinning and cleaning methods, techniques for tanning and preserving hides, and ways to work leather into specific shapes and forms for different applications and uses. The creation of natural soaps and cleaning agents from plant materials and animal fats allowed medieval people to maintain cleanliness and hygiene without access to manufactured chemical products. Techniques that involved understanding saponification processes, methods for rendering fats and extracting plant-based cleaning compounds, and ways to create effective cleaning products for different purposes and applications. Medieval techniques for food smoking and curing involved sophisticated understanding of how different types of wood, temperature control, and timing could preserve meats and fish while enhancing their flavor and nutritional value. Knowledge that included selecting appropriate smoking materials, controlling airflow and temperature, and understanding the chemical processes that prevented spoilage while creating safe, long-lasting preserved foods. The art of creating natural pest control methods allowed medieval people to protect their food stores, living spaces, and crops from insects and rodents using plant-based repellents and deterrents. Knowledge that included understanding which plants and natural compounds were most effective against different types of pests, methods for preparing and applying these treatments, and techniques for creating integrated pest management systems that prevented infestations without harmful chemicals. Medieval people possessed extensive knowledge about the edible and medicinal properties of mushrooms and fungi, understanding which species were safe to eat and which could provide therapeutic benefits. Knowledge that included proper identification techniques to avoid poisonous species, understanding seasonal and habitat patterns for different mushrooms, and methods for preparing and preserving edible fungi for extended storage and use. The construction of efficient heating systems using natural materials and simple engineering principles allowed medieval people to warm large spaces using minimal fuel. Techniques that involved understanding heat distribution, thermal mass, and airflow principles. Methods for designing and building fireplaces, stoves, and heating ducts, and ways to capture and circulate heat effectively throughout living and working spaces. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining gardens and food production systems in challenging environments involved understanding microclimates, soil amendments, water management, and plant selection strategies that could produce food even in marginal conditions. Knowledge that included methods for extending growing seasons, techniques for protecting plants from harsh weather, and ways to maximize productivity from limited growing space. The art of creating natural pigments and inks from minerals, plants, and other natural materials enabled medieval people to create permanent records, artwork, and decorative items without relying on manufactured products. Knowledge that included understanding color chemistry, methods for extracting and preparing pigments, and techniques for creating stable, long-lasting colors that would not fade or deteriorate over time. Medieval people understood sophisticated methods for reading animal tracks, signs, and behavior patterns that could provide information about wildlife populations, predator presence, weather changes, and other environmental conditions that affected survival and safety. Knowledge that included understanding different track patterns and what they indicated, recognizing feeding signs and territorial markers, and interpreting animal behavior as indicators of environmental conditions. The creation of natural lighting systems using plant and animal materials allowed medieval people to extend their productive hours beyond daylight without relying on manufactured candles or lamp oil. Techniques that involved understanding different materials that could provide illumination, methods for creating wicks and fuel systems, and ways to design lighting that was both efficient and safe for indoor use. Medieval techniques for creating and using natural camouflage and concealment methods enabled people to hide from enemies, approach wildlife, and move undetected through various environments. Knowledge that included understanding how different materials and colors blended with natural surroundings, methods for modifying appearance and movement patterns, and techniques for creating temporary and permanent concealment systems. The art of knot tying and rope work in medieval times encompassed hundreds of different knots and techniques for joining, securing, and manipulating ropes and cords for countless survival applications. Knowledge that included understanding which knots were most appropriate for different loads and conditions, methods for creating complex rigging systems, and techniques for working with different types of cordage and materials. Medieval people possessed detailed knowledge about the properties and uses of different types of wood for tools, construction, fuel, and other survival applications. Understanding that included recognizing different tree species by their characteristics, knowing the working properties of various woods, and understanding how to select and prepare wood for specific purposes and applications. The creation of natural waterproofing treatments using plant and animal materials enabled medieval people to protect clothing, shelter, containers, and other items from moisture damage. Techniques that involved understanding which natural substances provided the most effective water resistance, methods for applying these treatments, and ways to maintain and renew waterproof coatings over time. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining seed storage systems ensured the preservation of plant varieties and food security for future growing seasons. Knowledge that included understanding proper drying and storage conditions for different types of seeds, methods for protecting stored seeds from pests and moisture, and techniques for maintaining seed viability over extended periods. The art of creating natural antiseptics and wound treatments from plant materials enabled medieval people to prevent infection and promote healing without access to manufactured medical supplies. Knowledge that included understanding which plants possessed antimicrobial properties, methods for preparing and applying natural treatments, and techniques for creating effective bandages and wound coverings from available materials. Medieval people understood sophisticated methods for predicting and preparing for natural disasters such as floods, earthquakes, storms, and droughts based on environmental signs and seasonal patterns. Knowledge that included recognizing early warning signs, understanding historical patterns and cycles, and developing contingency plans and emergency supplies for various types of disasters and emergencies. The creation of efficient cooking systems using minimal fuel and simple materials allowed medieval people to prepare nutritious meals while conserving precious resources. Techniques that involved understanding heat distribution and retention, methods for designing and building efficient stoves and ovens, and ways to cook multiple items simultaneously while minimizing fuel consumption and cooking time. Medieval techniques for creating and using natural tanning agents from plant materials enabled the processing of animal hides without relying on manufactured chemicals. Knowledge that included understanding which plants contain the most effective tanning compounds, methods for extracting and preparing these materials, and techniques for applying tanning treatments to create durable, long-lasting leather products. The art of creating natural fabric dyes that would produce lasting, vibrant colors involved understanding the chemical properties of different plants and minerals, methods for extracting color compounds, and techniques for fixing dyes to create permanent, fade-resistant colors that would maintain their appearance through washing and extended use. Medieval people possessed extensive knowledge about the seasonal availability and preparation of wild foods, understanding when different plants, nuts, fruits, and other natural foods would be at their peak nutritional value, and how to properly harvest and prepare them for immediate consumption or long-term storage. Knowledge that was essential for surviving periods of scarcity and crop failure. The construction of effective ventilation systems using natural principles and simple materials enabled medieval people to maintain air quality and temperature control in their living and working spaces. Techniques that involved understanding airflow patterns, methods for creating natural draft systems, and ways to design structures that provided adequate ventilation while maintaining security and weather protection. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining natural barriers and defensive systems, using available materials and terrain features, enabled communities to protect themselves from human and animal threats. Knowledge that included understanding strategic placement and construction methods, techniques for using natural features to enhance defensive capabilities, and ways to create early warning systems using environmental indicators. The art of creating natural preservatives from plant and mineral materials allowed medieval people to extend the life of food, medicine, and other perishable items without refrigeration or manufactured chemicals. Knowledge that included understanding which natural substances were most effective for different types of preservation, methods for preparing and applying preservatives, and techniques for monitoring and maintaining preserved items over extended periods. Medieval people understood sophisticated methods for managing and conserving water resources during periods of drought and scarcity. Techniques that included rainwater harvesting systems, methods for reducing water consumption while maintaining health and cleanliness, and ways to locate and access underground water sources that were not immediately apparent on the surface. Ben aponatenus, ben sktiptotienus, ben okkotoenus, ben totitienus, ben dutienus, ben bakjidenus, ben podenus, ben ektienus, ben kodenus, ben fakaenus, ben stanenus, ben toidienus, ben kotenus, ben deuaenus, ben holoenus, ben jateenus, ben poishenus, ben janatationadenus, ben podenus, ben etienus, ben atoenus, ben manobicanus, ben shaunaenus. The creation of natural insect repellents using plant materials enabled medieval people to protect themselves and their food stores from bothersome and dangerous insects without harmful chemicals. knowledge that included understanding which plants were most effective against different types of insects, methods for preparing and applying repellent treatments, and techniques for creating protective barriers and deterrent systems. Medieval techniques for creating and using natural abrasives for sharpening, cleaning, and polishing involved understanding the properties of different stones, plants, and other materials that could serve these purposes. Knowledge that included methods for locating and preparing natural abrasives, techniques for using them effectively for different applications, and ways to maintain and preserve abrasive materials for extended use. The art of creating nutritionally balanced meals from foraged and cultivated foods required understanding food combinations that would provide complete proteins, essential vitamins and minerals, and adequate calories for maintaining health and energy during periods of limited food availability. Knowledge that was crucial for survival during famines and crop failures that periodically affected medieval communities. Medieval people possessed detailed understanding of animal behavior patterns that could provide early warning of natural disasters, weather changes, and other environmental threats. Knowledge that included recognizing unusual animal behaviors that indicated danger, understanding seasonal migration and breeding patterns, and using animal indicators to make decisions about safety and survival strategies. The creation of effective natural lighting that could provide illumination for extended periods using minimal resources involved understanding different combustible materials and their properties, methods for creating efficient wicks and fuel delivery systems, and techniques for designing lighting systems that provided adequate illumination while minimizing fire risk and resource consumption. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining natural cooling systems during hot weather involved understanding evaporation, thermal mass, and airflow principles that could reduce temperatures in living and food storage areas. Knowledge that included methods for designing and constructing cooling systems using available materials, techniques for maximizing cooling efficiency, and ways to integrate cooling systems with other survival infrastructure. The art of creating natural glues and adhesives from plant and animal materials enabled medieval people to construct and repair items without manufactured products. Knowledge that included understanding which natural materials provided the strongest bonds for different applications, methods for preparing and applying natural adhesives, and techniques for creating both permanent and temporary connections for various purposes. Medieval people understood sophisticated food preparation techniques that could maximize nutritional value while minimizing cooking fuel consumption. Methods that included understanding how different cooking techniques affected nutritional content, ways to prepare foods that would be easily digestible and satisfying, and techniques for creating complete meals using minimal ingredients and resources. The creation of natural fiber cordage from plant materials involved understanding which plants provided the strongest and most durable fibers, methods for harvesting and processing plant materials to extract useful fibers, and techniques for spinning, braiding, and weaving these fibers into strong, useful cordage for countless survival applications and purposes. Medieval techniques for creating and using natural camouflage materials enabled people to blend into their environment for hunting, protection, and concealment purposes. Knowledge that included understanding seasonal color changes in natural environments, methods for gathering and applying camouflage materials, and techniques for modifying appearance and movement patterns to avoid detection by humans and animals. The art of creating efficient storage systems that protected valuable items from theft, weather, pests, and deterioration while keeping them easily accessible involved understanding different storage materials and their properties, methods for organizing and protecting stored items, and techniques for concealing storage areas while maintaining convenient access for legitimate users. Medieval people possessed extensive knowledge about the medicinal properties of common weeds and plants that grew abundantly in disturbed soils around human settlements. Understanding that many of these overlooked plants possessed powerful healing properties and could provide effective treatments for common ailments and health problems when properly prepared and administered. The creation of natural waterproofing compounds using tree resins, animal fats, and other materials enabled medieval people to protect important items from moisture damage. Knowledge that included understanding which materials provided the most effective moisture barriers, methods for preparing and applying waterproofing treatments, and techniques for maintaining and renewing protective coatings over extended periods of use. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining efficient waste management systems prevented disease and contamination, while recycling valuable materials for other purposes. Knowledge that included understanding proper disposal methods for different types of waste, techniques for composting organic materials, and ways to recycle and reuse materials that might otherwise be discarded as worthless. The art of creating natural cleaning compounds from plant materials and mineral substances enabled medieval people to maintain cleanliness and hygiene without manufactured chemical products. Knowledge that included understanding which natural materials were most effective for different types of cleaning, methods for preparing cleaning compounds, and techniques for using these materials safely and effectively for various cleaning applications. Medieval people understood sophisticated methods for extending the growing season and protecting crops from weather extremes using simple materials and techniques. Knowledge that included creating microclimates that provided protection from frost and excessive heat, methods for season extension using natural materials, and techniques for protecting valuable plants from storms and other weather threats. The creation of natural pest deterrents that could protect stored food and other valuable items from rodents, insects, and other destructive creatures involved understanding which natural materials were most effective against different types of pests, methods for creating barrier systems and deterrent applications, and techniques for monitoring and maintaining pest control systems over extended periods. Medieval techniques for creating and using natural fire starters that could ignite easily even in wet conditions involved understanding the properties of different combustible materials, methods for preparing and storing fire-starting materials, and techniques for creating reliable ignition systems that would work consistently under challenging environmental conditions and circumstances. The art of reading natural signs and indicators that could provide information about weather patterns, seasonal changes, and environmental conditions enabled medieval people to make informed decisions about travel, agricultural activities, and survival preparations. Knowledge that included understanding how plants, animals, and atmospheric conditions changed in response to various environmental factors and patterns. Medieval people possessed detailed knowledge about the nutritional and medicinal properties of tree nuts, seeds, and fruits that could provide essential nutrients and therapeutic compounds. Understanding that included proper identification of different species, knowledge of seasonal availability patterns, and methods for harvesting, processing, and storing these valuable natural resources for extended use. The creation of effective natural insulation materials using plant and animal materials enabled medieval people to create warm, comfortable clothing and bedding that could protect against extreme cold. Knowledge that included understanding the insulating properties of different materials, methods for processing and preparing insulation materials, and techniques for incorporating insulation into clothing and bedding systems. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining natural drainage systems prevented flooding and water damage while conserving precious water resources. Knowledge that included understanding water flow patterns, methods for directing and controlling water movement, and techniques for creating drainage systems that worked effectively with natural terrain and environmental conditions. The art of creating natural mordants and fixing agents for dyes enabled medieval people to create permanent, vibrant colors that would not fade or wash out over time. Knowledge that included understanding the chemical properties of different fixing agents, methods for preparing and applying mordants, and techniques for achieving specific color effects and characteristics using natural materials and processes. Medieval people understood sophisticated food storage techniques that could preserve different types of foods for extended periods without spoilage. Methods that included understanding proper storage conditions for various foods, techniques for monitoring stored foods for signs of deterioration, and ways to extend storage life through proper handling and environmental control. The creation of natural wound dressings and bandages using plant materials enabled medieval people to treat injuries effectively without manufactured medical supplies. Knowledge that included understanding which plants possessed healing and antimicrobial properties, methods for preparing plant materials for medical use, and techniques for creating effective bandages and wound coverings that would promote healing. Medieval techniques for creating and using natural stains and finishes for wood and other materials enabled people to protect and beautify their possessions using materials found in their natural environment. Knowledge that included understanding which natural materials produce the most attractive and durable finishes, methods for preparing and applying stains and finishes, and techniques for maintaining and renewing protective coatings. The art of creating efficient heating systems that could warm large spaces using minimal fuel involved understanding heat distribution principles, thermal mass concepts, and combustion efficiency techniques. Knowledge that enabled medieval people to create heating systems that provided maximum warmth while minimizing fuel consumption and safety risks associated with indoor heating applications. Medieval people possessed extensive understanding of plant identification techniques that enabled them to distinguish between edible and poisonous species, even when plants were not in flower or fruit. Knowledge that included recognizing subtle differences in leaf shapes, growth patterns, and other identifying characteristics that remained consistent throughout the growing season and could prevent potentially fatal mistakes. The creation of natural anti-inflammatory treatments using plant materials enabled medieval people to treat pain, swelling, and other inflammatory conditions without manufactured pharmaceuticals. Knowledge that included understanding which plants possessed anti-inflammatory compounds, methods for preparing and administering plant-based treatments, and techniques for creating topical and internal remedies for different types of inflammatory conditions. These forgotten techniques represent not merely historical curiosities, but practical knowledge that could prove invaluable in situations where modern conveniences and supply chains are disrupted, reminding us that human ingenuity and careful observation of natural processes once provided solutions to survival challenges that we now consider insurmountable without technological assistance. Yet our ancestors managed to thrive, using nothing more than their understanding of the natural world and their willingness to work with rather than against the fundamental principles that govern life on this planet. Medieval blacksmiths possessed knowledge that went far beyond simple metalworking, understanding how to create complex alloys using natural materials and primitive furnaces, techniques that could produce steel stronger and more durable than many modern manufactured metals, knowledge that included understanding the properties of different ores and how they could be combined, methods for achieving precise temperature control using only wood fires and bellows, and techniques for heat treating and tempering metals to achieve specific hardness and flexibility characteristics that were perfectly suited for different tools and weapons. The art of creating natural concrete and mortar using lime, volcanic ash, and other natural materials enabled medieval builders to construct structures that have survived for centuries. Techniques that involved understanding chemical reactions between different natural materials, methods for achieving proper mixing ratios and curing conditions, and ways to create waterproof, durable building materials that could withstand earthquakes, storms, and the gradual erosion of time while maintaining their structural integrity. Medieval people understood sophisticated techniques for creating and maintaining seed banks that could preserve plant varieties through multiple generations, knowledge that included understanding proper storage conditions for different types of seeds, methods for maintaining seed viability over extended periods, techniques for preventing pest damage and moisture contamination, and ways to organize and catalog seed collections to ensure genetic diversity and availability of specific varieties when needed. The creation of natural antibiotics and antimicrobial treatments using fermented plant materials and other natural substances enabled medieval people to fight infections and diseases without manufactured pharmaceuticals, knowledge that included understanding fermentation processes that produced beneficial compounds, methods for creating and maintaining cultures of beneficial microorganisms, and techniques for preparing and administering natural antibiotic treatments that could combat specific types of bacterial and fungal infections. Medieval techniques for creating and using natural catalysts and chemical reactions enabled people to process materials and create useful compounds using only natural materials and simple equipment. Knowledge that included understanding how different natural substances could accelerate chemical processes, methods for controlling reaction conditions to achieve desired results, and techniques for safely handling and using natural chemicals and reactive materials for various industrial and survival applications. The art of reading soil conditions and understanding agricultural potential enabled medieval farmers to assess land quality and determine optimal planting strategies without modern soil testing equipment. Knowledge that included recognizing visual indicators of soil fertility and composition, understanding how different soil types responded to various crops and cultivation methods, and methods for improving soil quality through natural amendments and management practices that could transform marginal land into productive agricultural areas. Medieval people possessed extensive knowledge about the behavioral patterns of domestic animals that could indicate weather changes, health problems, and environmental threats. Knowledge that included recognizing subtle changes in animal behavior that provided early warning of storms, earthquakes, and other natural disasters. Methods for interpreting animal responses to environmental conditions, and techniques for using animal behavior as a reliable forecasting system for various environmental and weather patterns. The creation of sophisticated water management systems using only natural materials and gravity-fed engineering enabled medieval communities to supply clean water to large populations while maintaining adequate pressure and flow rates. Techniques that involved understanding hydraulic principles and water flow dynamics, methods for designing and constructing aqueducts, cisterns, and distribution systems, and ways to maintain water quality and prevent contamination throughout complex water distribution networks. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining natural refrigeration systems that could preserve food and medicines at consistently cool temperatures involved understanding evaporation cooling principles, thermal mass concepts, and insulation techniques. Knowledge that enabled people to create cooling systems that could maintain temperatures significantly below ambient air temperature, using nothing more than natural materials, strategic ventilation, and careful design of cooling chambers and storage areas. The art of creating natural bleaching agents and whitening compounds from plant and mineral materials enabled medieval people to clean and whiten textiles, papers, and other materials without harsh chemical bleaches. Knowledge that included understanding which natural materials possessed bleaching properties, methods for preparing and applying bleaching treatments safely, and techniques for achieving consistent whitening results while preserving the integrity and strength of treated materials. Medieval people understood complex fermentation processes that could create not only alcoholic beverages, but also natural medicines, food preservatives, and even industrial chemicals from organic materials. Knowledge that included understanding the conditions required for different types of fermentation, methods for controlling and directing fermentation processes to achieve specific results, and techniques for harvesting and purifying the products of fermentation for various applications and uses. The creation of natural water-resistant and fire-resistant treatments for wood, fabric, and other materials involved understanding the properties of natural compounds that could provide protection against moisture and flame. Knowledge that included methods for extracting and preparing protective compounds from plant and mineral sources, techniques for applying treatments to achieve maximum protection, and ways to maintain and renew protective coatings over extended periods of use and exposure. Medieval techniques for creating and using natural optical devices and magnification systems enabled people to examine small objects, start fires, and improve vision using only natural materials and simple grinding techniques. Knowledge that included understanding the optical properties of different transparent materials, methods for shaping and polishing optical elements, and techniques for creating simple but effective magnifying devices, telescopes, and fire-starting lenses from readily available materials. The art of creating natural time-keeping devices that could accurately measure time intervals and track seasonal changes without mechanical clockwork involved understanding astronomical observations, shadow patterns, and natural cycles. Knowledge that included methods for creating sundials, water clocks, and other time-keeping instruments. Techniques for calibrating these devices for different geographical locations, and ways to maintain accurate time references for agricultural, religious, and social activities. Medieval people possessed sophisticated understanding of plant breeding and selection techniques that could improve crop yields, disease resistance, and other desirable characteristics through careful selection and propagation of superior individual plants. Knowledge that included recognizing desirable traits in plants, understanding inheritance patterns, methods for controlled pollination and seed production, and techniques for maintaining pure breeding lines while preventing unwanted cross-pollination with inferior varieties. The creation of natural sound amplification and communication systems enabled medieval people to transmit messages and signals over long distances without electronic equipment. Techniques that involved understanding acoustic principles and sound propagation, methods for creating horn and trumpet devices from natural materials, and ways to use natural terrain features and atmospheric conditions to enhance sound transmission and communication effectiveness over considerable distances. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining natural lubrication systems for mechanical devices and moving parts involved understanding the properties of plant and animal oils, waxes, and other lubricating substances. Knowledge that included methods for extracting and preparing lubricants from natural sources, techniques for applying lubrication to achieve maximum effectiveness and longevity, and ways to maintain lubrication systems in challenging environmental conditions. The art of creating natural photographic and image recording processes using light-sensitive plant and mineral materials enabled medieval people to create permanent visual records and artistic images without manufactured photographic chemicals. Knowledge that included understanding light-sensitive reactions in natural materials, methods for preparing and using natural photographic emulsions, and techniques for developing and preserving images created through natural photographic processes. Medieval people understood sophisticated techniques for creating and using natural electrical generation and storage systems that could provide power for simple devices and applications. Knowledge that included understanding static electricity generation using natural materials, methods for creating primitive batteries and electrical storage devices, and techniques for using natural electrical phenomena for practical applications such as electroplating, magnetic compass construction, and simple electrical devices. The creation of natural plastic and flexible material substitutes from plant and animal sources enabled medieval people to create waterproof, flexible materials that could serve many of the same functions as modern synthetic plastics. Knowledge that included understanding the properties of natural polymers and how they could be modified and processed. Methods for creating flexible, durable materials from organic sources, and techniques for shaping and forming these materials into useful products and applications. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining natural mechanical advantage systems using levers, pulleys, and inclined planes enabled people to move heavy objects and perform difficult tasks with minimal human effort. Knowledge that included understanding mechanical principles and force multiplication, methods for constructing mechanical devices from available materials, and techniques for combining simple machines to create complex mechanical systems that could accomplish seemingly impossible tasks. The art of creating natural chemical indicators and testing materials that could detect the presence of various substances and conditions enabled medieval people to analyze materials and monitor environmental conditions without manufactured testing equipment. Knowledge that included understanding color change reactions in natural materials, methods for preparing and using natural indicator substances, and techniques for interpreting test results to make informed decisions about safety, quality, and suitability of various materials and conditions. Medieval people possessed extensive knowledge about the properties and uses of various clays and earth materials that could be shaped, fired, and used for countless survival applications, from pottery and storage containers to building materials and industrial applications. Understanding that included recognizing different types of clay and their working properties, methods for processing and preparing clay materials, and techniques for firing and finishing ceramic products to achieve desired strength, porosity, and appearance characteristics. The creation of sophisticated natural filtration systems that could purify water, oils, and other liquids using natural materials enabled medieval people to obtain clean, safe fluids from contaminated or impure sources. Knowledge that included understanding the filtration properties of different natural materials, methods for constructing multi-stage filtration systems, and techniques for maintaining filter effectiveness while preventing contamination and ensuring consistent performance over extended periods of use. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining natural preservation chambers and storage environments that could maintain optimal conditions for different types of materials involved understanding humidity control, temperature regulation, and atmospheric composition. Knowledge that enabled people to create specialized storage environments that could preserve everything from food and medicine to documents and textiles in perfect condition for extended periods without any form of artificial climate control or preservation chemicals. The art of creating natural camouflage and concealment systems that could hide people, animals, and equipment from detection involved understanding visual perception, color theory, and pattern recognition. Knowledge that included methods for creating effective camouflage using natural materials, techniques for modifying natural patterns to achieve specific concealment effects, and ways to integrate camouflage systems with natural terrain and vegetation to create virtually undetectable hiding places and concealed installations. Medieval people understood complex natural chemistry principles that enabled them to create useful compounds and materials through controlled chemical reactions, using only natural materials and simple equipment. Knowledge that included understanding reaction mechanisms and chemical properties of natural substances, methods for controlling reaction conditions and safety, and techniques for purifying and refining the products of natural chemical processes to achieve consistent quality and effectiveness. The creation of natural energy storage and conversion systems that could capture and utilize natural energy sources such as wind, water, and solar power enabled medieval people to accomplish tasks that would otherwise require human or animal power. Knowledge that included understanding energy conversion principles, methods for constructing energy capture and storage devices from available materials, and techniques for efficiently utilizing captured energy for various mechanical and industrial applications. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining natural communication networks that could relay information rapidly across vast distances involved understanding signal transmission, message encoding, and network organization. Knowledge that enabled communities to coordinate activities, share information, and respond to threats and opportunities much more effectively than would be possible through individual messengers or simple word-of-mouth communication systems. The art of creating natural mathematical instruments and calculation devices enabled medieval people to perform complex mathematical operations and engineering calculations without manufactured calculating equipment. Knowledge that included understanding mathematical principles and computational techniques, methods for creating calculating devices from natural materials, and techniques for using these instruments to solve practical problems related to construction, navigation, astronomy, and other technical applications. Medieval people possessed sophisticated understanding of natural materials science that enabled them to modify and improve the properties of natural materials through various treatments and processing techniques. Knowledge that included understanding the molecular structure and properties of different materials, methods for altering material characteristics through heat, pressure, chemical treatment, and other processes, and techniques for creating composite materials that combine the best properties of different natural substances. The creation of natural waste recycling and resource recovery systems enabled medieval communities to minimize waste while maximizing the utility of all available materials. Techniques that involved understanding decomposition and recycling processes, methods for separating and processing different types of waste materials, and ways to transform waste products into useful materials and resources that could support various survival and economic activities. Medieval techniques for creating and using natural biotechnology applications that utilized living organisms to accomplish various tasks and produce useful products involved understanding biological processes and organism behavior. Knowledge that included methods for cultivating and managing beneficial microorganisms, techniques for using biological processes to produce medicines, foods, and industrial materials, and ways to harness natural biological systems for practical applications and problem-solving purposes. The art of creating natural quality control and testing systems that could ensure the consistency and safety of various products and materials enabled medieval people to maintain high standards without manufactured testing equipment. Knowledge that included understanding quality indicators and testing methods, techniques for establishing and maintaining production standards, and ways to verify the safety and effectiveness of various products and materials through observation and natural testing procedures. Medieval people understood sophisticated natural engineering principles that enabled them to design and construct complex mechanical systems using only natural materials and human labor. Knowledge that included understanding structural mechanics, load distribution, and material stress patterns. Methods for designing efficient and durable mechanical systems, and techniques for constructing complex engineering projects that could function reliably for extended periods under challenging conditions. These remarkable techniques, developed through generations of necessity and refined through countless trials and innovations, represent a profound understanding of natural principles and processes that enabled our ancestors to create sophisticated solutions to complex survival challenges, using nothing more than their observations of the natural world, their accumulated experience, and their willingness to work within natural limitations, rather than attempting to overcome them through brute force or artificial means, creating a legacy of practical knowledge that could prove invaluable for anyone seeking to develop greater self-reliance and independence from the complex technological systems that dominate our modern world. The mastery of natural weather modification techniques enabled medieval communities to influence local weather patterns through careful manipulation of environmental conditions, knowledge that included understanding atmospheric pressure systems and how they could be affected by large fires, water evaporation, and terrain modifications, methods for creating localized temperature and humidity changes that could encourage or discourage precipitation, and techniques for using smoke and other atmospheric particles to influence cloud formation and rainfall patterns in ways that could benefit agricultural activities and water collection efforts. Medieval people possessed extraordinary knowledge about the healing properties of specific combinations of plants that worked synergistically to create more powerful therapeutic effects than any single plant could provide alone. Understanding that included recognizing which plant combinations enhanced each other's medicinal properties. Methods for preparing complex herbal formulations that addressed multiple health issues simultaneously. And techniques for timing the administration of different plant medicines to maximize their effectiveness while minimizing potential adverse reactions. The art of creating natural early warning systems for various dangers and threats enabled medieval communities to detect approaching enemies, natural disasters, and other hazards long before they became immediate threats. Knowledge that involved understanding how to train animals as sentries and alarm systems. Methods for creating mechanical devices that could detect subtle environmental changes. And techniques for establishing networks of observation posts and communication systems that could relay warning signals rapidly across large areas. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining natural air conditioning systems that could cool large spaces during hot weather involved sophisticated understanding of evaporation, airflow, and thermal dynamics. Knowledge that enabled people to create cooling systems that could reduce interior temperatures by substantial amounts using nothing more than strategic water placement, natural ventilation design, and careful architectural planning that took advantage of prevailing winds and natural cooling processes. The creation of sophisticated food testing systems that could detect spoilage, contamination, and poisoning before consumption enabled medieval people to avoid foodborne illness and accidental poisoning. Knowledge that included understanding visual, aromatic, and taste indicators of food safety. Methods for using animals and other biological indicators to test food safety. And techniques for preserving and preparing foods in ways that minimized contamination risk while maximizing nutritional value and safety. Medieval people understood advanced natural mining and mineral extraction techniques that could locate and extract valuable minerals and metals from the earth, using only simple tools and careful observation of geological indicators. Knowledge that included recognizing surface signs that indicated underground mineral deposits, understanding different types of ore and their processing requirements, methods for extracting minerals using natural chemical processes, and techniques for refining raw materials into useful metals and compounds. The art of creating natural pharmaceutical preparations that could deliver precise doses of medicinal compounds enabled medieval healers to provide consistent and effective treatments for various ailments. Knowledge that involved understanding concentration techniques for plant medicines, methods for standardizing dosages and potency of natural remedies, and techniques for creating release formulations that could provide sustained therapeutic effects over extended periods without requiring frequent readministration. Medieval techniques for creating and using natural magnetic devices and navigation instruments enabled travelers to determine direction and location, even in unfamiliar territory or adverse weather conditions. Knowledge that included understanding magnetic properties of natural materials, methods for creating and maintaining magnetic compasses and direction-finding instruments, and techniques for using magnetic declination and other factors to achieve accurate navigation, results over long distances and challenging terrain. The creation of natural encryption and code systems enabled medieval people to protect sensitive information and communications from unauthorized access. Knowledge that involved understanding various coding and cipher techniques that could be implemented without complex machinery. Methods for creating and maintaining secure communication protocols, and techniques for training personnel in the use of encryption systems, while maintaining operational security and preventing code breaking by adversaries. Medieval people possessed extensive knowledge about the properties and applications of various natural fibers that could be used for countless purposes beyond simple textile production. Understanding that included recognizing different fiber types and their unique characteristics, methods for processing fibers to achieve specific properties such as strength, flexibility, and resistance to moisture and decay, and techniques for combining different fibers to create composite materials with enhanced performance characteristics for specialized applications. The art of creating natural perfumes, scents, and aromatic compounds served not only aesthetic purposes, but also practical survival functions including insect repellent, medical aromatherapy, and psychological mood enhancement. Knowledge that included understanding which natural materials produce the most effective aromatic compounds, methods for extracting and concentrating scent materials, and techniques for creating long-lasting aromatic preparations that could provide therapeutic and practical benefits over extended periods. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining natural greenhouse and growing environments that could extend growing seasons and protect plants from harsh weather involved understanding microclimate creation, solar heat capture, and plant protection systems. Knowledge that enabled people to grow food and medicinal plants year-round even in challenging climates. Methods for designing and constructing protective growing structures, and techniques for managing growing environments to optimize plant health and productivity. The creation of sophisticated natural defense systems that could protect communities from both human and animal threats involved understanding strategic positioning, natural barriers, and defensive engineering principles. Knowledge that included methods for designing fortifications that took advantage of natural terrain features, techniques for creating obstacle systems and deterrents using available materials, and ways to organize community defense efforts to maximize effectiveness while minimizing resource requirements and manpower needs. Medieval people understood complex natural food, combining principles that could maximize nutritional absorption and utilization, while preventing digestive problems and nutrient deficiencies. Knowledge that included understanding which foods enhanced each other's nutritional value when consumed together. Methods for preparing meals that provided complete amino acid profiles and essential nutrients, and techniques for timing food consumption to optimize digestion and energy production throughout the day. The art of creating natural therapeutic environments that could promote healing and recovery from illness and injury involved understanding how environmental factors affected human health and well-being. Knowledge that included methods for designing healing spaces that provided optimal conditions for recovery, techniques for using natural elements such as light, air circulation, and sound to enhance therapeutic effects, and ways to create supportive environments that encouraged the body's natural healing processes. Medieval techniques for creating and using natural biological control systems enabled communities to manage pest populations and maintain ecological balance without harmful chemicals or destructive interventions. Knowledge that included understanding predator-prey relationships and how they could be managed, methods for encouraging beneficial insects and animals while discouraging harmful species, and techniques for creating habitat modifications that naturally controlled pest populations while supporting beneficial wildlife. The creation of natural energy conservation systems that could minimize energy consumption while maintaining necessary functions and comfort levels involved understanding efficiency principles and resource management. Knowledge that enabled medieval people to accomplish essential tasks using minimal fuel and human energy. Methods for designing systems and processes that maximized output while minimizing input requirements, and techniques for organizing activities and resource use to achieve maximum efficiency and sustainability. Medieval people possessed sophisticated understanding of natural disaster preparedness and recovery techniques that could help communities survive and rebuild after catastrophic events. Knowledge that included understanding how to prepare for different types of disasters based on geographical and seasonal factors. Methods for creating emergency supplies and backup systems that could function independently. And techniques for organizing community response and recovery efforts to minimize losses and restore normal functioning as quickly as possible. The art of creating natural learning and knowledge transmission systems enabled medieval communities to preserve and pass on essential survival information across generations without written records or formal education systems. Knowledge that involved understanding memory enhancement techniques and mnemonic devices, methods for organizing information in ways that could be easily remembered and transmitted, and techniques for creating storytelling and oral tradition systems that preserved technical knowledge within cultural narratives and practices. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining natural quality of life enhancements that could improve comfort, convenience, and satisfaction without complex technology involved understanding human needs and how they could be met using simple solutions. Knowledge that included methods for creating labor-saving devices and efficiency improvements, techniques for enhancing comfort and convenience using available materials, and ways to organize daily life and activities to maximize satisfaction and minimize unnecessary effort and stress. The creation of sophisticated natural resource management systems that could ensure sustainable use of natural resources, while meeting community needs involved understanding ecological principles and long-term planning. knowledge that enabled medieval communities to maintain resource availability over extended periods without depletion or environmental damage, methods for monitoring and managing resource extraction and use, and techniques for creating regenerative systems that actually improved resource availability over time. Medieval people understood advanced natural healing techniques that went beyond herbal medicine to include energy healing, therapeutic touch, and other holistic approaches that addressed physical, mental, and spiritual aspects of health and well-being. Knowledge that included understanding subtle energy systems and how they affected health, methods for diagnosing and treating conditions using natural healing approaches, and techniques for promoting overall wellness and preventing illness through lifestyle and environmental modifications. The art of creating natural beauty and aesthetic enhancements that could improve the visual appeal and emotional impact of living spaces and personal appearance involved understanding color theory, proportion, and design principles. Knowledge that enabled people to create beautiful and uplifting environments using only natural materials and simple techniques. Methods for enhancing personal appearance and creating attractive clothing and accessories, and techniques for designing spaces and objects that provided both functional utility and aesthetic satisfaction. Medieval techniques for creating and using natural psychological and mental enhancement methods enabled people to improve memory, concentration, decision-making, and other cognitive functions through natural approaches. Knowledge that included understanding how nutrition, exercise, and environmental factors affected mental performance. Methods for training the mind to achieve enhanced capabilities, and techniques for managing stress, anxiety, and other mental health challenges using natural approaches and lifestyle modifications. The creation of natural entertainment and recreation systems that could provide enjoyment, social bonding, and mental stimulation helped medieval communities maintain morale and social cohesion during difficult periods. Knowledge that involved understanding human psychological needs for play and social interaction. Methods for creating games, music, and other recreational activities using available materials. And techniques for organizing community events and celebrations that strengthened social bonds and provided relief from the stresses of daily survival. Medieval people possessed extensive knowledge about natural preservation techniques for non-food items such as documents, artwork, tools, and other valuable possessions that needed protection from deterioration and damage. Understanding that included recognizing factors that caused deterioration in different materials, methods for creating protective treatments and storage conditions, and techniques for restoring and maintaining valuable items to extend their useful life and preserve their function and appearance. The art of creating natural transportation systems that could move people and goods efficiently across various types of terrain involved understanding mechanical principles and engineering solutions. Knowledge that enabled medieval people to create vehicles, boats, and other transportation devices using available materials. Methods for designing transportation systems that matched specific terrain and cargo requirements. and techniques for maintaining and operating transportation equipment to ensure reliable and safe movement of people and goods. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining natural safety and accident prevention systems helped communities avoid injuries and deaths from common hazards and dangerous activities. Knowledge that included understanding risk assessment and hazard identification, methods for creating safety protocols and protective equipment using available materials, and techniques for training community members in safe practices and emergency response procedures that could prevent accidents and minimize harm when incidents occurred. The creation of sophisticated natural education systems that could effectively transfer knowledge and skills from experienced individuals to learners enabled medieval communities to maintain and advance their collective knowledge and capabilities. Knowledge that involved understanding learning principles and effective teaching methods, techniques for organizing educational activities and apprenticeship programs, and ways to create educational materials and tools that could facilitate learning and skill development using available resources. These vast repositories of practical wisdom, accumulated through countless generations of human experience and refined through the harsh realities of medieval life, represent a comprehensive approach to survival and thriving that worked in harmony with natural systems rather than attempting to dominate or replace them, demonstrating that human ingenuity and careful observation could create solutions to virtually any challenge that life might present, solutions that were sustainable, effective, and often superior to modern alternatives in terms of reliability, environmental impact, and long-term viability for communities that understood and applied these time-tested principles and practices. The mastery of natural sleep enhancement techniques enabled medieval people to achieve restorative rest even under challenging conditions. Knowledge that included understanding how environmental factors such as temperature, humidity, sound, and light affected sleep quality. Methods for creating comfortable sleeping environments using natural materials and simple adjustments. Techniques for using specific plants and natural compounds to promote relaxation and deeper sleep. And ways to optimize sleep timing and duration based on seasonal changes and daily activity patterns that supported both physical recovery and mental clarity. Medieval people possessed extraordinary knowledge about natural conflict resolution and community harmony techniques that could prevent disputes from escalating into violence while maintaining social cohesion and cooperation. Understanding that included recognizing early warning signs of social tension and conflict. Methods for mediating disputes using traditional wisdom and fair judgment principles. Techniques for creating community structures that encouraged cooperation and mutual support. And ways to address underlying causes of conflict through resource sharing, collaborative problem solving, and inclusive decision-making processes. The art of creating natural spiritual and emotional support systems that could help individuals and communities cope with trauma, loss, and psychological distress involved understanding human emotional needs and healing processes. Knowledge that enabled medieval people to provide comfort and guidance during difficult times using ritual, ceremony, storytelling, and community support. methods for creating sacred spaces and practices that facilitated emotional healing and spiritual growth, and techniques for maintaining hope and resilience in the face of hardship and uncertainty. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining natural memory enhancement systems that could improve information retention and recall enabled people to preserve vast amounts of practical knowledge without written records, knowledge that included understanding how memory worked and what factors enhanced or impaired memory function, methods for organizing information in memorable patterns and associations, techniques for using repetition, rhythm, and imagery to strengthen memory, and ways to create collective memory systems that ensured important knowledge was preserved and transmitted accurately across generations. The creation of sophisticated natural leadership development systems that could identify and cultivate effective leaders within communities involved understanding human psychology and social dynamics, knowledge that enabled medieval communities to develop leaders who could make wise decisions, inspire cooperation, and guide groups through challenging situations, methods for recognizing leadership potential and providing appropriate training and experience, and techniques for creating leadership structures that balanced authority with accountability and encouraged collaborative decision-making. Medieval people understood advanced natural communication techniques that went beyond simple speech to include body language, symbolic representation, and nonverbal communication methods that could convey complex information accurately and efficiently, knowledge that included understanding how different types of information could be communicated most effectively, methods for creating standardized symbols and signals that could be understood across cultural and language barriers, and techniques for developing communication skills that enhanced understanding and reduced misunderstanding in critical situations. The art of creating natural motivation and inspiration systems that could maintain morale and encourage continued effort during difficult periods involved understanding human psychology and what drove people to persevere through hardship, knowledge that enabled medieval communities to sustain motivation and hope even during extended periods of scarcity, danger, or uncertainty, methods for creating meaningful goals and celebrating achievements that reinforced positive behaviors, and techniques for building community identity and shared purpose that encouraged individual sacrifice for collective benefit. Medieval techniques for creating and using natural diagnostic methods that could identify health problems, resource issues, and other challenges before they became critical enabled early intervention and prevention, knowledge that included understanding subtle indicators and warning signs that preceded major problems, methods for systematic observation and assessment that could detect changes and trends, techniques for interpreting complex information and making accurate diagnoses, and ways to develop intuitive skills that enhanced analytical abilities and improved decision-making accuracy. The creation of natural innovation and creativity enhancement systems that could stimulate new ideas and solutions to emerging challenges involved understanding how creativity worked and what conditions fostered innovative thinking, knowledge that enabled medieval people to continuously improve their techniques and adapt to changing circumstances. methods for encouraging experimentation and creative problem-solving within communities, and techniques for combining existing knowledge in new ways to create novel solutions to complex problems and evolving needs. Medieval people possessed extensive knowledge about natural relationship building and social networking techniques that could create strong bonds and mutual support systems within communities. Understanding that included recognizing what made relationships strong and lasting, methods for building trust and cooperation between individuals and groups, techniques for resolving relationship conflicts and restoring harmony, and ways to create social structures that encouraged positive interactions while discouraging harmful behaviors and antisocial attitudes. The art of creating natural decision-making systems that could help individuals and groups make wise choices under pressure and uncertainty involved understanding decision-making psychology and what factors led to good versus poor decisions. Knowledge that enabled medieval people to develop reliable processes for evaluating options and choosing courses of action. Methods for gathering and analyzing information relevant to important decisions. And techniques for involving appropriate people in decision-making processes while maintaining efficiency and accountability. Medieval techniques for creating and maintaining natural legacy systems that could preserve achievements and knowledge for future generations involved understanding how to create lasting impact and influence that would continue beyond individual lifespans. Knowledge that included methods for documenting and preserving important information and achievements, techniques for training successors, and ensuring continuity of important functions, and ways to build institutions and traditions that would maintain community values and capabilities across generations. The creation of sophisticated natural adaptation systems that could help communities adjust to changing conditions and new challenges enabled medieval people to thrive despite environmental changes, population pressures, and other evolving circumstances. Knowledge that involved understanding change processes and how to manage transitions effectively. Methods for identifying emerging trends and preparing for future challenges. And techniques for modifying existing systems and developing new capabilities as circumstances required. Medieval people understood advanced natural resource optimization techniques that could extract maximum value from limited materials and opportunities. Knowledge that enabled communities to achieve remarkable results despite having access to relatively few resources. Methods for identifying and utilizing overlooked resources and opportunities. Techniques for combining and recombining available materials to create new possibilities. And ways to organize activities and processes to achieve maximum efficiency and effectiveness with minimal waste. The art of creating natural backup and redundancy systems that could ensure continued functioning even when primary systems failed involved understanding vulnerability assessment and contingency planning. Knowledge that enabled medieval communities to maintain essential functions during emergencies and unexpected disruptions. Methods for creating alternative approaches and backup systems that could substitute for primary methods. And techniques for building resilience and flexibility into all critical systems and processes. Medieval techniques for creating and using natural measurement and standardization systems enabled accurate communication and coordination of complex activities without manufactured measuring instruments. Knowledge that included understanding how to create consistent measurement standards using natural references and proportional relationships. Methods for maintaining accuracy and precision in measurements and calculations. And techniques for coordinating activities across different groups and locations, using standardized approaches and shared reference points. The creation of natural quality assurance systems that could maintain high standards and prevent errors and failures involved understanding systematic approaches to quality control and performance monitoring. Knowledge that enabled medieval people to achieve consistent results and maintain reliability in critical activities. Methods for establishing and maintaining performance standards, and techniques for identifying and correcting problems before they caused serious failures or safety issues. Medieval people possessed sophisticated understanding of natural timing and scheduling systems that could coordinate complex activities and optimize resource utilization. Knowledge that included understanding natural cycles and rhythms that affected various activities. Methods for creating efficient schedules that maximized productivity while minimizing conflicts and resource waste. And techniques for adapting plans and schedules to accommodate changing conditions and unexpected developments while maintaining essential objectives. The art of creating natural motivation maintenance systems that could sustain effort and commitment over extended periods enabled medieval communities to complete long-term projects and maintain essential function through difficult periods. Knowledge that involved understanding human psychology and what sustained motivation over time. Methods for creating rewards and incentives that encouraged continued effort. And techniques for building cultural values and social structures that supported persistence and dedication to important goals and responsibilities. As the gentle rhythm of these ancient wisdoms flows through our modern consciousness like a quiet stream carrying the accumulated knowledge of countless generations, we begin to understand that these medieval survival techniques represent far more than mere historical curiosities or primitive solutions to basic problems, but rather a comprehensive philosophy of living that recognized the fundamental interconnectedness of human beings with their natural environment. A worldview that understood survival not as a desperate struggle against hostile forces, but as a harmonious dance with the natural rhythms and cycles that governed all life on Earth. These forgotten arts remind us that true resilience comes not from the accumulation of complex technologies and manufactured products, but from the development of deep understanding and practical skills that can function independently of external systems and supply chains, capabilities that our ancestors cultivated through necessity, but which we might choose to develop through wisdom. Recognizing that the most reliable and sustainable approaches to human survival and prosperity are those that work with natural principles rather than against them. Solutions that enhance rather than degrade the systems upon which all life ultimately depends. In our current age of technological complexity and global interconnection, These medieval techniques offer us a different path forward, one that does not require us to abandon beneficial modern innovations, but rather to supplement them with time-tested approaches that can provide security and capability when contemporary systems fail or prove inadequate to the challenges we face, reminding us that human ingenuity and careful observation of natural processes remain as valuable today as they were centuries ago, perhaps even more so as we confront environmental changes and resource limitations that may require us to rediscover the wisdom of living more simply and sustainably. The legacy of these forgotten survival techniques lies not in their specific applications, though many remain remarkably practical and effective, but in the mindset they represent, an approach to problem solving that begins with careful observation of natural processes and seeks to work within natural limitations, rather than attempting to overcome them through brute force or artificial complexity. A philosophy that recognizes that the most elegant and lasting solutions are often the simplest ones, those that require the least external energy and create the least disruption to the systems that support them. As we face an uncertain future filled with challenges that may test our resilience and adaptability in ways our recent generations have not experienced, these ancient techniques offer us hope and practical guidance, reminding us that human beings have survived and thrived through countless difficulties, using nothing more than their intelligence, their willingness to work together, and their deep understanding of the natural world that surrounds and sustains us all. Knowledge that remains as valid and valuable today as it was in the medieval monasteries and villages, where these techniques were first developed and refined through generations of practical application and continuous improvement. Thus, we conclude this exploration of forgotten medieval survival techniques with the recognition that the greatest lesson they offer us is not any single method or approach, but rather the understanding that true security and prosperity come from developing our own capabilities and understanding, from building strong communities based on mutual support and shared knowledge, and from learning to live in harmony with the natural systems that provide everything we need for survival and fulfillment. Wisdom that transcends any particular time period or technological level and remains as relevant and important for our future as it was for our ancestors' past.